End of November 2016, the new President of the United States, Donald Trump, arrives at the White House for a one-on-one with the previous President, Barack Obama. This is the first time they meet. Jonathan Karl, a correspondent for ABC News and accredited at the White House for 20 years, is one of the few journalists present during this handover of power.
He did not think he was going to win. Nobody thought he was going to win, including Donald Trump. And what I noticed as soon as I walked in that room in the Oval Office, he had just spent an hour hearing from the President of the United States, the outgoing president, all that he was going to face, the most difficult challenges he was going to inherit. And I think that it finally dawned on him that, yes, he won this election that nobody thought he was going to win, and he just seems a little bit, almost like he's freaked out by his surroundings. Oh my God, what did I just do? What am I up against now? It blew me away. I took note of it, and I never saw that side of Donald Trump again.
In less than 4 years, the political novice has become a leader with an authoritarian, unpredictable, and provocative style. His strategy, or rather his obsession, deciding alone. The result, he has divided America, gotten angry with Europe and Canada, declared war on the media and on the environment, and has ousted or forced out 37 of his main collaborators, among them John Bolton and Anthony Scaramucci.
Donald Trump comes in at 11 o'clock in the morning, looks around, says, "What's up for today?" He didn't read the presidential daily brief. It was very hard to communicate information to him, or that he seemed to retain it.
He won't read a document or learn about something. He is making the assumption that he knows way more about something than he actually does.
The question is, does he function the way a president of the United States needs to function? And the answer is he does not.
He is the White House press secretary. He is the White House communications director. He is the chief of staff. He is the national security advisor. He is driving all of this.
I think this goes back in part to his view that it's his gut reaction to things that served him well in his business career, at least that was his view, and would serve him well as president.
He wants everybody to fall in line around him, but he is searching from time to time for honest opinion.
Well, he spends a lot of time on the telephone with friends. The problem here is the president would hear from people who know absolutely nothing about a particular issue.
He is not somebody who is the product of his advisors. Donald Trump is Donald Trump.
The President of the United States.
February 4th, 2020, a triumphant Donald Trump turns the traditional State of the Union speech into a campaign speech. A genuine self-celebration delivered to a standing ovation from Republicans. On this day, it would seem his path to re-election is assured.
Three years ago, we launched the Great American Comeback. Tonight, I stand before you to share the incredible results. Jobs are booming, incomes are soaring, poverty is plummeting, crime is falling, and my fellow Americans, the best is yet to come. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much.
Donald Trump knows that tomorrow the Senate will acquit him in his trial, which opened on the 16th of January 2020 for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. He is accused of pressuring the Ukrainian president into launching an investigation of Joe Biden's son, Biden being, of course, his likely rival for the next presidential election. But the trial turns out to be a painful failure for his adversaries. After he refused to shake her hand, Democratic Chairwoman Nancy Pelosi took a copy of Trump's speech and ripped it to shreds on camera in front of the whole world.
I think that's the most impressive thing about Trump, he's like flame retardant, meaning they're hitting him with 2,000 gallons of flamethrower gasoline trying to burn him in effigy, and he's still walking around. I mean, it's unbelievable.
He has been lucky. For 3.5 years of his presidency, there were no major challenges. Things were working pretty smoothly. No major wars. The impeachment process had failed. And I think he had a pretty good shot of getting reelected.
The future of Trump seems bright, but an unexpected event will put that future into doubt. February 6th, 2020, the day after the acquittal of the American president, the world is made aware of the death of Dr. Li Wenliang in Wuhan, China, accused by Beijing of propagating a false rumor about the apparition of a new virus. Beginning in December 2019, he had tried to warn the Chinese authorities of the gravity of this mysterious sickness. According to the New York Times, 6 days earlier, the 29th of January, one of Donald Trump's advisors, Peter Navarro, warned him of the potential catastrophic impact and the ravaging effects of an epidemic of coronavirus would cause to the United States. Millions of Americans could die. But Donald Trump does not take Navarro's warnings seriously. He chooses instead to minimize the impact of coronavirus to avoid creating a panic on the stock market.
When President Trump heard about that, he said, that's not going to happen.
The handling of the coronavirus outbreak by Donald Trump, by our president, has been a disaster. From the beginning, he has denied that it's ever going to hit the United States.
And he didn't want to hear anything that might indicate trouble for the American economy, which he saw as his ticket to re-election.
Donald Trump has been referring to this virus as a hoax by the Democrats.
This is their new hoax. They tried the impeachment hoax. That was on a perfect conversation. They tried anything. They tried it over and over. They've been doing it since she got in. It's all turning. They lost.
If it's a hoax by the Democrats, why is China, why is Europe responding to this? I mean, this is crazy talk.
What is distinctive that Donald Trump has brought to American politics is name-calling, lying, and pandemic ignorance.
The virus will not have a chance against us. No nation is more prepared or more resilient than the United States.
And day after day, Trump comes to the White House and people think, well, he's going to change now. He's really going to focus on this. He's going to bear down. He's going to make sure there's a coordinated strategy. And it never happens.
We have it under control. It's going to be just fine.
Okay. President Xi, there's just some talk in China that maybe the transparency isn't everything that it's going to be. Do you trust that we're going to know everything we need to know from China?
I do. I have a great relationship with President Xi. We just signed probably the biggest deal ever made.
He didn't want to hear bad things about Xi Jinping. He didn't want to hear that the Chinese were lying about the extent of the medical consequences.
John Bolton was present during the one-on-one between Donald Trump and the Chinese President Xi Jinping at the Osaka summit. Donald Trump had announced, to everyone's surprise, that he was renouncing his plan to impose new taxes at customs for Chinese merchandise imported to the United States.
We're in that meeting with Xi Jinping in Osaka. He's going to make sure to have the Chinese buy more agricultural products because that would help him to win the farm state votes. That's what his focus is on. He was clearly asking for a foreign government's help. I'm very confident that's exactly what Trump said. Those are things I think people should know and what Trump is really like.
He has been in denial mode, and so he has denied it all through January and February. Then in March, when we could no longer deny the virus was here.
Coronavirus causes its first death on American territory, near Seattle. Soon after, a 30-year-old woman dies in New York, giving the impression that the virus is spreading on American soil. At that moment, the entire world is facing an epidemic that will not go away, leading to an overall feeling of losing control.
The coronavirus crisis is a good example of the failure of his leadership. If we had a real leader, first of all, he would have paid attention to science. He would have allowed the people who know about infectious disease to control the process, which is sort of obvious, except it's obvious to everyone except Donald Trump.
Dr. Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, quickly becomes the face of the fight against coronavirus in the United States. When asked why he remains silent when Donald Trump makes factual mistakes at press conferences, he answers, "I can't jump in front of the microphone and push him down."
How much worse we'll get will depend on our ability to do two things: to contain the influx of people who are infected coming from the outside, and the ability to contain and mitigate within our own country.
To keep new cases from entering our shores, we will be suspending all travel from Europe to the United States for the next 30 days.
March 13th, Trump completely switches sides. Rather than minimizing the importance of the virus, he now positions himself as a war chief, determined to crush this new enemy of America.
New actions were taken in our very vigilant effort to combat and ultimately defeat the coronavirus. We've been working very hard on this. We've made tremendous progress. To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency.
All the cafes, restaurants, theaters, cinemas, and stores are closed. But there are two exceptions. Grocery stores and gun stores will remain open. The coronavirus pandemic is pushing people to rush to the stores to buy guns and ammunition. Weapons sales are exploding in most American states. Sales are as much as 5 times higher than usual. Donald Trump confirms that he has given in to demands made by the NRA, the powerful arms lobby. By the beginning of the year, the NRA has already collected $30 million to finance the president's re-election campaign.
It's too bad. It's too bad, because we never had an economy as good as the economy we had just a few weeks ago.
Most morgues are now overwhelmed by the number of deaths caused by coronavirus. Employees in hazmat suits pile up the victims of COVID-19. Refrigerator trucks have been requisitioned to stock the bodies that morgues cannot take.
And I'd like to just ask and caution that the media, we would respectfully ask the media and politicians and everybody else involved not do anything to incite a panic, because there's no reason to panic at all. This is something that is being handled professionally.
The coronavirus is very much under control in the USA. It's going to disappear. It's like a miracle. It will disappear. March 4th, we have a very small number of people in this country infected. March 10th, we're prepared. We're doing a great job with it. It will go away. Just stay calm. It will go away. What do you say to Americans who believe that you got this wrong?
That's why CNN is not trusted anymore. They are not trusted. They are fake news. Remember that. Go ahead.
First, we were called fake news, and then Trump, doubled down on it and started referring to the news media in the United States as the enemy of the people.
I'm so proud of myself. I didn't call them the fake news media. I didn't call them. I said to myself, I will not today, in front of our great armed forces, call them fake news. We know the real truth, but we won't say it today.
You know, the United States of America should not be a place where the president can just start labeling members of the news media as the enemy. You know, he is attacking the credibility of the press, and I just didn't think we should stand for it.
Jim Acosta, White House correspondent for CNN, has become a thorn in Donald Trump's side ever since their memorable argument on immigration 2 years prior.
The president was repeatedly referring to that caravan as an invasion. We knew it wasn't an invasion, but this was a further indictment of immigrants in this country that the president was making. You know, he was referring to immigrants in all sorts of derogatory ways, in ways that presidents of the United States had not done in the past. And, you know, I wanted to challenge the president on that. The caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling me that. I appreciate it.
Why did you characterize it as such? Hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President,
that's enough. I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead. Well, when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people. Go ahead.
So there it is. He basically called me the enemy to my face on national television. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this intern enters the picture and tries to take my microphone away. And I'm thinking to myself, what's going on here? So what do you do about that? Do you not ask the question? Do you just let these lies go unchecked?
I think Jim Acosta's a very unprofessional man. I think he does this with everybody. He gets paid to do that. You know, he gets paid to burst in. He's a very unprofessional guy.
I look at my phone and it says that my press pass has been suspended.
When you're in the White House, this is a very sacred place to me. This is a very special place. You have to treat the White House with respect. You have to treat the presidency with respect.
And from that point forward, they had essentially put a bullseye on my head. And they decided that CNN was going to become their enemy. I would get death threats or threatening messages on almost a daily basis on social media. And one of these tweets that Cesar Sayoc posted, attached to it was a photograph of a decapitated goat's head. And what we would find, he was tweeting on Twitter saying things like, Acosta, you're the enemy of America, you're next.
Donald Trump announces on Twitter that every Monday he's going to award the Fake News Awards to the most dishonest and corrupt journalists and news media outlets of the week.
Like, what is going on in this country where I'm going to a political rally and I have 4 or 5 bodyguards surrounding me to make sure nobody takes a swing at me or nobody takes a shot at me?
There are many people in the press that are unbelievably dishonest. They don't cover stories the way they're supposed to be. They don't even report them in many cases if they're positive. So there's tremendous, I came up with the term fake news.
It's a real shame to me that the United States government, that the White House, that the president and his team would be using that kind of rhetoric. The kind of rhetoric that puts a bullseye on our backs, puts people's lives in jeopardy. I have kids, I have a family, other reporters, other journalists, photographers, and so on who are going to these rallies, they have families. Does the President of the United States really understand what he's doing?
On fake news CNN, I think NBC may be more distorted and worse, but
I have had Donald Trump go after me in rather personal and intense ways publicly before the television cameras, calling me bleeping nasty guy.
Oh, you didn't tell me that. Oh, I see. You didn't tell me that, John. Thank you for telling me that. See, there's a typical fake news deal.
You asked me when she was appointed. I told you when she was appointed.
You're a third-rate reporter, and what you just said is a disgrace, okay?
In New York, the coronavirus pandemic is out of control. To relieve the overwhelmed morgues, the authorities have decided to bury the unclaimed dead on an island located in the Northeast Bronx. During a surreal press conference, Donald Trump promotes the use of bleach to cure coronavirus.
Supposing we hit the body with a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light, and I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do, either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that, too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of the lungs. So it'd be interesting if you could. And maybe you can, maybe you can't. Again, I say maybe you can, maybe you can't. I'm not a doctor. You're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me. So we'll see. But the whole concept of the light, the way it kills it in 1 minute, that's pretty powerful.
You've got to be careful when you say fairly effective. It was never done in a clinical trial. They compared it to anything.
Even a child would know that you don't inject a disinfectant into your body.
And the problem with that is that he's the president of the United States. People actually believe him when he says those things. And what we have seen is that there are people who have tried to ingest bleach and have gotten sick or even died.
His lack of understanding of medicine or biology was remarkable, even for just a person on the street. Most people understand that how dangerous and absurd what he said was.
His staff will say, no, that was just a joke. But the next day, the president will come back and double down and reiterate and say it again. So I don't believe that these things that he says are jokes. I think he takes them seriously. People like Dr. Fauci didn't resign, despite Donald Trump talking about injecting bleach.
Dr. Anthony Fauci and the team in shock. They are left with the very difficult choice of whether to stay within this administration and do the best they believe they could do from within.
Anthony Fauci is a very respectable guy. Unfortunately, there's some embedded politics to his job, and he's trying to see if he can outlast Trump and all of Trump's insanity. And so, but many people are trying to do that. I mean, what we did was we put somebody very abnormal in a very, very important job. And so what happens is you're sitting there, and I did this. I said, okay, this guy can't be this batshit crazy. I mean, there's no way. I mean, he made it to the presidency. And so you're trying to hyper-normalize him, and you're trying to say, okay, let's gaslight. He says X, Y, Z. Let's tell people he's just kidding, all that nonsense. But he's not kidding. He's actually crazy.
25th Amendment writers never anticipated that we would have a psychopath as president who would have to be removed for psychological reasons. He is fundamentally different from normal human beings. Fundamentally different. He's a psychopath or a sociopath. And in that way, it would be just as accurate to describe him as a predator.
Republicans elected the man who was so vividly of bad character on the Access Hollywood tape.
Inside this bus, Donald Trump is unwittingly recorded. He does not appear on screen, but his thoughts on women are perfectly audible. The now famous video, "Grab 'em by the Pussy," has gone round the world. This cassette was revealed to the public in October 2016, during the presidential election.
I did try and fuck her. She was married. I moved on her like a bitch.
It's hot as shit. Yes, the Donald is good.
You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab him by the pussy. I can do anything. Hello, how are you? Hi.
Mr. Trump, how
nice
are
seeing you.
Pleasure
Terrific.
to meet you.
Throughout his career, Donald Trump has targeted women. The millionaire has never hidden his sexism.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account
Only
has
Rosie
several...
O'Donnell.
Well, he is afraid of women. Women are supposed to be inferior to him from his worldview, and yet they are showing themselves capable, able to think rationally and intelligently in ways that he cannot. And so the only way that he can avoid this feeling of inferiority is to divert away from those rational discussions by attacking them.
On the roof of a building in Times Square, deserted from the pandemic, an artist originating from New York has installed a clock which is counting the number of lives that have been lost in America due to the mismanagement of the pandemic by President Trump.
So you're talking about 2.2 million deaths, 2.2 million people from this. And so if we could hold that down, as we're saying, to 100,000, it's a horrible number. Maybe even less, but to 100,000. So we have between 100 and 200,000. We all together have done a very good job, but 2.2 up to 2.2 million deaths, and maybe even beyond that. I'm feeling very good about what we did last week.
Is someone who cares nothing for the well-being or even the life of others, and only for their own benefit. And that's Donald Trump, as he's shown throughout.
He doesn't really have any sense of empathy for others. He doesn't care about the American people. What he cares about is himself.
I think wearing a face mask as I greet presidents, prime ministers, dictators, kings, queens, I don't know, somehow I don't see it for myself.
French government officials accused Trump's America of intercepting the masks they had ordered which were already in a plane ready to leave. U.S. buyers arrived and took control of the masks by offering to pay twice as much. America first, no matter the cost.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
Donald Trump's foreign policy is essentially, you hear him say it all the time, America first. His belief is, other countries do whatever the hell you want to do. We're going to do what we want to do, and if our interests align, fine. He does not believe in alliances.
He's a man who thinks that America does not need allies.
The president doesn't like that. The president wants us to be America first, which is sort of code for America alone.
Of course, there's a history to that phrase. I don't know if it's a history that the president really understands, but America first was the movement that opposed U.S. involvement in World War II. So America first were those that thought that it was a mistake to go to war against Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan.
He has a perverse view about America. His vision for America is a negative, dark, dystopian vision.
It's so strange to watch the president interact with our European allies, our historic allies, our closest allies diplomatically, economically, to see the president of the United States, in a sense, treat our European allies as adversaries. And he's very aggressive. He's had, with the French.
We have to make him perfect. He is perfect.
There's no sense of shame or embarrassment here on the part of Donald Trump.
Trump saw Macron, as he did every other Democratic foreign leader, as somebody who could bring him benefits that he wanted.
John Bolton recounts that after meeting with Emmanuel Macron, Donald Trump whispered to him, "Everything that guy touches turns to shit."
Before we left Washington for the famous summit with Putin in Helsinki, he asked if Finland was part of Russia. I don't think he saw that as a fault or a gap that didn't augur well for American foreign policy.
The low point of the Trump presidency and foreign policy was probably in Helsinki, when he met with Vladimir Putin and said, "Did you interfere in the American election?" The entire American intelligence community said, "Yes, they interfered, and here's how, and here's who did it." And Putin said, "No, I didn't do it." And Trump came out and said, "Well, I can either believe Putin or my own intelligence community, and I choose to believe Putin."
They're dying to see us make a little bit of a mistake. They analyze every word. They say, did he say that? Could it have been? Did he say something positive about Russia? I think he loves Russia.
In response to a press question, Trump said, "Well, I think the meeting with Putin might be the easiest of all. Who would have ever thought that?" And the answer is nobody except for Donald Trump.
Putin, I think, we know he says that the collapse of the Soviet Union was the greatest geopolitical tragedy of the 20th century. We know that he wants to reestablish Greater Russia and its influence on its neighbors.
Trump had better relations with some of the authoritarian leaders. Why is that? The psychiatrist, I'm sure, would have a field day with that. I think it's really because he liked the way the big guys did this. They weren't constrained by legislatures or politics and electoral constraints. So he kind of admired that and liked to show he could do it too, although he knew actually he couldn't.
To demonstrate the frivolousness of the Trump approach to the external world, it would be North Korea.
Trump first come out with, outrageously incendiary rhetoric, seem like you're on the verge of a major war, maybe even a nuclear war.
No nation on earth has an interest in seeing this band of criminals arm itself with nuclear weapons and missiles.
And then grab the guy you were just insulting and say, let's go and have a summit, and be all smiles and acting like, and he even talks about exchanging love letters with Kim Jong-un.
And then we fell in love, okay? No, really. He wrote me beautiful letters, and they're great letters. We fell in love.
The president's reaction was kind of juvenile. It sort of demeans the office of the presidency, so I don't really respond to it.
A new world can begin today.
A 4-minute video clip, which Donald Trump put together in secret with a few of his advisors, was shown to the North Korean leader during their meeting. The American journalists could not believe their eyes. "I think Kim loved it," said Donald Trump.
Destiny Pictures presents a story of opportunity, a new story, a new beginning, one of peace, 2 men, 2 leaders, 1 destiny.
Well, I think after a while you get used to it. I mean, that's part of the problem. I can't tell you how many times we explained to him why the United States was in South Korea because of the partition after World War II in 1945 and all the history that flowed from that. And he never seemed to get it. Well, after a while, what's the point of telling him anymore? Or what's the point of laughing about it? It's just another fact of life you have to deal with.
Beyond that, he also cares deeply about how he's portrayed. I mean, this is ultimately the Trump show, and he wants to, be the most important person on the world stage.
You can have all sorts of individual quirks and still be a great leader. Winston Churchill was, Charles de Gaulle was. So what if they were narcissists? They performed. Trump does not.
We came over and I said, "Hey, I'm over here. I want to call up to Chairman Kim." And we got to meet, and stepping across that line was a great honor. A lot of progress has been made. A lot of friendships have been made, and this has been in particular a great friendship.
At the end of the summit, nothing had happened. There were no major agreement that came out of it. North Korea's nuclear program kept going.
He was never willing to do that. He was never willing to acknowledge that Kim Jong-un was just playing, and that we spent 2 years in these chases after Kim Jong-un to have summit meetings and never made any progress on the nuclear front at all.
And experts, and they said, "We're going to have to close the country." I said, "We've never closed the country before. This never happened before. You're saying," I said, "Are you serious about this? We are going to take this country that's fully employed, where we have 160 million people working, and you're telling me we have to close it? And people are going to go out of business, and they're going to go bankrupt, and they're not going to have jobs? What are we talking about here?"
How long did it take you to accept that new reality?
Well, I accept you're going to lose more people by putting a country into a massive recession or depression. You're going to lose people. You're going to have suicides by the thousands.
Trump is also fighting against multiple governors, including the New York governor, who had the last say by confining the city. The inhabitants of New York, used to the traffic jams and crowds, adapt to this new reality of empty streets, closed schools, and shuttered windows. All non-essential activities are forbidden, as well as gatherings of more than 50 people. Meanwhile, across the United States, 16 million Americans are facing unemployment.
It was a severe outbreak. It was a severe pandemic in New York. They closed things down, and they bent that curve. They flattened that curve.
The President of the United States has the authority to do what the President has the authority to do, which is very powerful.
Has any governor agreed that you have the authority to decide when their state...
I haven't asked anybody, because I don't, you know why? Because I don't have to. I think there are certain people that would like it to do financially poorly because they think that would be very good as far as defeating me at the polls.
The president encourages protests against Democrat governors. He asks his supporters to free their states from the confinement decided on by local authorities.
Why are you acting like an imbecile? Like, why are you doing these bullying tweet storms?
In 3 years, Donald Trump has sent 11,000 tweets. He's followed by 33 million web users. The majority of his tweets are attacks on his opponents or on the investigations involving him. Multiple governors have not given any sign of quarantining themselves. Dozens of demonstrators, often armed, protest against the restrictions put into effect against the coronavirus pandemic and demand the quarantine be lifted.
Where's our flag? Where's
In multiple states, among them Florida, no measures are taken. People are shoulder to shoulder in parks, and the beaches are overrun.
We have a problem. Now, the next couple of weeks are going to be critical in our ability to address those surgings that we're seeing in Florida, in Texas, in Arizona, and in other states.
Tony Spell is an evangelical pastor from the Life Tabernacle Church, located in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He defied the gathering restrictions by organizing a function in his church.
You don't close an entire nation down to keep a virus from spreading. It was an error. Donald Trump should have never listened to the doctors, and he should not have listened to the science. What is the science? No one in my church has died of the virus. We have 9,800 members.
The United States has between 50 and 80 million evangelical Protestants, around 25% of the population. 80% of them voted for Trump.
People here from across the nation came in because we're the only Easter Sunday service between here and California that they could find open. So God bless America.
So during this pandemic, people from 40 states across America have come in and worshiped with us because they want to be in a free church in America where they can practice their freedom of religion. People have joined our church from other churches that have closed because they're attracted to faith over fear. And we go to their homes, we pick them up, bring them to church, and then we have a service.
For the Christian, it's time to go back to the pews. It's time to go back to the pulpit. It's time for America to get back in their churches. It's time for Virginia.
I was arrested at the police station on the parking lot. I was led into a trap. They fitted me with an ankle bracelet like I was a terrorist for refusing to comply with the governor's emergency orders to not have an assembly of more than 10 people. But we never will. Never. President Donald Trump said God is on our side, and he is right. He is the first Christian president that we've had in decades. He is a supporter of mine. He is a fan of ours. He promotes what we're doing.
Let's all pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you today and we thank you for this nation that was born in 1776. We pray in 2020 it would be born again. And we humbly ask you to bless our nation and to bless our President, Donald Trump. It needed a fighter and a champion for freedom. And Lord, that's exactly what we have. I thank you, Lord, that he doesn't claim to be perfect, but he is passionate.
Thank you very much. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. Most powerful people in the world.
The true believers, the people who live in the same bubble that he lives in, who get almost all their information from right-wing news site, Facebook, and believe things like the coronavirus is a hoax, that wearing a mask is mind control. There is that group. They are not going to abandon him. They are going to stay with him. If he loses the election, they will believe that it was a fake election. They will not abandon him.
He's the first president to have a spiritual advisor and an evangelical in the White House. Mike Pence is a godly man.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again,
Mike Pence, vice president and fundamental Christian, was chosen by Donald Trump mainly because he wanted a conservative and religious figure to reassure those voters.
but at your direction, we are going.
Father, you have given us a gift, President Donald Trump, who wants to bring healing to this country. And we know we have a president who wants to make America good. Amen.
Amen.
Beautiful. Thank you, Thank you so much.
The Bible says that Jerusalem should be the headquarters of the nation of Israel. So Donald Trump fulfilled biblical prophecy in moving that. So the Christians of America said this needs to be done. Do you want to be blessed? Do you want to have favor? Yes, I do. Then move the embassy to Jerusalem.
And then the State Department said, no, you'll disrupt things. And Donald Trump, who's a disruptor, said, I don't care, and he went ahead and did it.
And we moved the capital of Israel to Jerusalem. That's for the evangelicals. You know, it's amazing with that. The evangelicals are more excited about that than Jewish people.
And he listened. He is a wise president.
All of the embassies in Israel, including the U.S. Embassy, are located in Tel Aviv, since no country has recognized Jerusalem as the Hebrew capital since its annexation after the war in 1967. Its relocation created something of an explosion in the region.
He saw the entire approach to Israel as almost a re-election strategy. Some of his core supporters, including people like Sheldon Adelstein, were, hardcore pro-Israel, and he gave them staunchest supporters in the United States something that no other president would, which was, moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, basically giving the Israelis a green light on their annexation on the West Bank.
This is an extraordinary voyage. President Trump, Donald, I'm honored to be here today. Thank you.
Bibi Netanyahu has not survived as long as he has. He's had a kind of support that no Israeli leader has had since 1948.
And I think that he had this notion in his head that he would have loved a moment on the world stage where he was, crafting the ultimate deal, peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
Without President Trump's determination, resolve, courage, we would not be here today.
While Israel celebrates the inauguration of the American embassy in Jerusalem, in the presence of Donald Trump's daughter, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip burst into conflict. More than 60 Palestinian protesters are killed by Israeli forces. Taking word for word the declarations of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about the danger it represents, Donald Trump distances himself from the international Iran nuclear deal. According to an Israeli journalist, the American president has adopted the Netanyahu doctrine and made it official American policy.
Today I am announcing our strategy, along with several major steps we are taking to confront the Iranian regime's hostile actions and to ensure that Iran never, and I mean never, acquires a nuclear weapon.
The Ayatollahs have never made a strategic decision to give up nuclear weapons, and they never will voluntarily. So if you want to remove this threat to peace and security in the Middle East, and not just the nuclear threat, support of terrorism, conventional military activity in Iraq and Syria, around the region, that regime needs to be removed, and yet he was never willing to do that.
The United States military successfully executed a flawless precision strike that killed the #1 terrorist anywhere in the world, Qasem Soleimani.
The Iranian general Qasem Soleimani, a charismatic and popular figure in Iran, was an Iranian major general in the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the ideological army of the Islamic State. Israel was surely warned of the American raid. 2 days earlier in Washington, the Secretary of State had phoned Netanyahu to inform him of an important action against Iran.
The killing of General Soleimani, that was probably, could have been a bridge too far, and that could have led to an accidental war. And thank God, cooler heads prevailed. So that's an example where a decision by him, supported by some people but not supported by others, could have tripped us into a warlike situation.
For someone like that to hold the nuclear codes of the United States, to be the most powerful man in the world, is, of course, very scary.
For example, he'll start a war in the South China Sea with China, or he'll start a war with Iran, or something else. And then he will claim, as Hitler did, now you must rally behind me because we are under attack as a people.
I don't think he can sit there in a map room and say, okay, generals, how's it going? This is a country I want to go to war with. Tomorrow I'm going to use the War Powers Act, and I'm going to declare a war or a military intervention in that country. Let's go. I think a lot of people say, let's hold our horses on something like that.
Across the United States, COVID deaths reached 100,000. Students from the New York Theater Workshop have symbolically placed body bags in front of the Trump Tower with inscriptions such as, "Trump lies, people die." The epidemic exposes immense racial, social, and medical inequalities. 70% of the deceased were African American. Food banks are being stormed. An emergency support plan under the form of stimulus checks is voted for by Congress. Trump, never missing an opportunity to take all the credit, wanted his signature to be on the checks that would be sent out to beneficiaries. A 17-year-old African-American adolescent dies of COVID-19. Without medical insurance, he was refused treatment. The hospital confirmed the arrival of the young patient into the emergency room, but since he didn't have medical insurance, he was denied treatment. They sent him to the city clinic.
58% of African American youth are not working. There's another shooting in Chicago every 2 hours. 45% of African American children under the age of 6 are living in poverty. The inner cities have been left behind. Crime is through the roof. Public education is a total disaster. There are no jobs. It's dangerous to walk down the street with your child. To the African American community, I say, what the hell do you have to lose? Vote for me. I will fix it. I will fight for you harder than anyone has ever fought for you before.
You see your hands.
Damn, man.
Stay in the car. Let me see your other hand.
I'm sorry.
Let me see your other hand.
Please, Mr.
Both hands.
Do nothing.
Put your fucking hands up right now.
Please don't shoot me, man. I'm not shooting you, man. Please, man.
The 25th of May in Minneapolis, Minnesota, George Floyd, father of 2 girls, is stopped in his car by 4 police officers.
I can't breathe. Please, the knee in my dick.
Get in the car.
Mama.
Get up. Get in the car.
The stop is filmed by passers-by, who point out that the victim is dying, but the police officers prevent them from intervening. Images of the event soon go viral on social media and worldwide news networks. Protests and riots against racism and police violence explode in Minneapolis and then in the rest of the country over the next few days.
Can we make some sense out of this? Can we make some sense out of this?
Since George Floyd's death, mural paintings have flourished in the neighborhood where he lived, which is transformed into a place of pilgrimage.
Trump knows how to incite that racist hatred thing that's deep inside of most people, which is inside of his base. People have always hated black people. People come over to this country. It's always been a sentiment of anti-blackness, and he prospers off that.
Take a knee! Yeah! Yeah! Yeah!
An incredible image. Here, police officers kneel together with demonstrators. They join in protest against the latent racism that's been festering between the African American community and police forces all over the country.
I can't breathe! I can't breathe! I can't breathe! We want change! We want change! We want change! We want change!
George Floyd's death ignites every American city. Hundreds of people are gathered in front of the White House. Out of urgency, fortified walls have been put up around the presidential residence. Donald Trump flees from his office and is made to hide in a bunker for over an hour, a bunker that was created in the event of a terrorist act. President Trump asks for the exterior lights of his residence to be turned off, while the protests against racism and police brutality rage on.
What happened in this city last night was a total disgrace. I am dispatching thousands and thousands of heavily armed soldiers to stop the rioting, looting, vandalism, assaults, and the wanton destruction of property.
It just shows his total disregard for American people to unleash the army, our military forces, into American streets. It's an occupation. It seems like we're heading towards a dictatorship.
In 2 weeks, the fortunes of American millionaires increased by nearly 10%, which equates roughly to a $300 billion gain. In the same period of time, 22 million Americans declare themselves unemployed. 1 in 6 African American workers lose their jobs. June 6th, Donald Trump, having yet to condemn the murder of George Floyd, calls a press conference to boast about his economic record.
This is a great tribute. What we're announcing today is a tremendous tribute to equality. We're bringing our jobs back. Hopefully George is looking down right now and saying this is a great thing that's happening for our country. This is a great day for him. It's a great day for everybody. This is a great day for everybody. This is a great, great day.
3.5 years of data is now in. He hasn't done anything really to help those people. You can't have like somebody, a racist, be the president of the United States. It's not a good look for a country whose first name is United. You can't have somebody that divisive.
Nobody's ever done for the black community what President Trump has done.
His actions are very clear, and to me, he only seems to pick on black people in lots of issues. He certainly uses terminology and language that racists use.
But I think the breaking point for me was the full-blown racism towards the women of the squad, the congresswomen. Those 4 women, he said, go back to the country that you originally came from.
The 14th of July, 2019, a tweet from Donald Trump is aimed at 4 Democratic congresswomen who are of ethnic minorities. He suggests that they should go back to the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came. All 4 of the young women members of Congress are American citizens, and all except for 1 were born in the United States.
He's not a racist. He's not complicated enough to be a racist. Racists have views, have theories. Hitler had a whole theory of why the Jews were bad and the Germans were good, and it was all balderdash and nonsense, but it was an idea, it was a worldview.
If you think that any of this is based on philosophical or more abstract thinking on Trump's part, I think you're giving him too much credit.
In Portland, law enforcement officers with no identification or insignias leap out of unmarked vehicles dressed in brand new khaki uniforms. These officers have gridlocked the city. without authorization from the local authorities and are brutally and forcibly scattering Black Lives Matter activists. These men take their orders straight from Washington, from Donald Trump.
Rioters and looters have firearms, and free people like myself don't have firearms. How can we protect ourselves? The right to bear arms is the Second Amendment of the United States Constitution. We have the right to bear arms. You never operate from a standpoint of weakness against crime. You have to have the stronger hand.
The city of Kenosha in Wisconsin is shaken by angry protests after police shoot young African-American Jacob Blake. The situation is extremely tense. Shortly before midnight, gunshots can be heard. A 17-year-old adolescent, self-appointed militant and weapons fanatic has just shot 2 protesters. He is stopped by the police.
With Kenosha, Donald Trump, he should have denounced the shooter. He's absolutely empowered white supremacists. Donald Trump is looking like the Grand Master of the Ku Klux Klan. He empowers them.
I believe a civil war would be entirely conceivable. I think we need to prepare for that. Pandemic is not the worst scenario with this presidency. The worst is still yet to come.
There has been a whiff of fascism in the air here in the United States. It is a path to darkness. We were witnessing the dawn of an ultra-nationalist movement. Political rhetoric that is just unusual to the average American has become commonplace and normalized. You are pulling the wool over your own eyes. You're turning a blind eye to things if you don't recognize what we're witnessing, what we're seeing with our own eyes.
This is not America. This is not what America was supposed to be. It's not what it says in our doctrines.
What we've witnessed over the last 4 years is we've seen nastiness and cruelty sanitized and normalized in this country. You know, for some reason, it's become okay for some Americans to see little Latin American children locked up in cages down on the border.
1 month after his election, Donald Trump had started the construction of a wall separating the United States and Mexico along a border that spans more than 3,000 kilometers. It was one of his election promises.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems, and they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists.
Thousands of immigrants who attempt to illegally enter the United States are stopped and held in detention centers. Trump applies a zero-tolerance policy. 2,000 children, all underage, are separated from their parents.
My mind goes to the children that Donald Trump is keeping in cages. When you think about this, I think about the separations of families. I think about how un-American Donald Trump has made America.
Anybody who knows anything about children or has children understands that this will have permanent, life-altering effects on these children. Permanent. This is a trauma that doesn't go away.
You know, I'm the son of a Cuban refugee. I never thought I would see a day where people would accept that sort of thing here in this country.
As multiple states implement a new confinement policy, Donald Trump, now campaigning, claims to have discovered the main reason for all the aggravation and the rise in coronavirus cases.
When you do testing to that extent, you're going to find more people, you're going to find more cases. So I said to my people, slow the testing down, please.
Donald Trump predicts a massive crowd for his first meeting since the beginning of the coronavirus pandemic. But the event ends up having an audience of 6,000 people in a room set up for 20,000. Curiously, for this meeting, Donald Trump chooses to play music from the film Titanic.
Joe Biden is not the leader of his party. Joe Biden is a helpless puppet of the radical left.
And he's an unbelievable communicator, okay? He speaks with a third-grade linguistic quality, and he's got probably a third or fourth grade vocabulary, but he is an unbelievable communicator. He has a blunt force level of communication where people will watch him. There was a time we were in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We had just finished the rally, came up the steps of the plane, and as he was taking his coat off, he looked over at me. He said, "Hey, Scaramucci, you want to see my speech?" And I looked at him, I said, "Yeah, okay, Mr. Trump, I'd like to see your speech." So he reached into the coat, and he took out a piece of paper. There were 4 words on the paper scribbled in his cardiac arrest handwriting. And you see that? That was my whole speech. You see that? This is what the American people want.
Don't you understand, you dumb son of a bitch? Don't you understand?
You know, when God was producing Donald Trump and they were going down the buffet table to pick up the different genes, they left out the shame genes, man. There's no shame in this guy's game.
Trumpism is a desperate appeal to get an ever larger portion of an ever smaller portion of the American electorate. White, non-college educated, intellectually and economically downscale voters. And they are a smaller and smaller portion of our country.
He has alienated, I would say aggressively alienated, some of those key constituencies, key voter groups that you need to win. Women, especially suburban women, Hispanics, growing group, younger voters, growing group. He's done nothing to win any of them. In fact, he has alienated them.
There's a large group of Americans who love him, just love him. Think he is the greatest thing that has ever happened to America. Those people will never abandon him.
And currently, it's something around 40% of the population, which is incredibly awful.
Joe Biden, the Democratic candidate who will be facing Trump next November, chooses Kamala Harris as his running mate. With an Indian mother and a Jamaican father, she will be the first black woman to be nominated as Vice President of the United States.
Donald Trump has already started his attacks, calling Kamala, quote, nasty, whining about how she is, quote, mean to his appointees. It's no surprise, because whining is what Donald Trump does best, better than any president in American history.
This virus has impacted almost every country, but there's a reason it has hit America worse than any other advanced nation. It's because of Trump's failure to take it seriously from the start.
From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas.
While the Democratic convention happens virtually and with no physical audience, the Republicans stand in front of thousands of supporters stuffed into the White House gardens, a first in the history of the United States, disregarding tradition.
Joe Biden is weak. And violence we have seen in Democrat-run cities all, like Kenosha, Minneapolis, Portland, Chicago, and New York, and many others, Democrat-run. There is violence and danger in the streets of many Democrat-run cities throughout America.
Well, nothing lasts in life, even the bad things. But 8 years of this president, particularly an unhinged, re-elected Donald Trump, who would feel validated not only in his policies, but in his manner. The man who has reduced presidential rhetoric to name-calling and 280-character tweets, the coarseness, the vulgarity, the childishness of it all. And 8 years of this would have so coarsened American discourse And re-election would have so validated a kind of gangster approach to public life.
He just shouldn't be president. He's a danger to the American civilization and the global civilization as president.
I think he has done major, probably permanent damage to the country, or damage that will at least last a long time.
Rebuilding that is going to be the work of a generation. It's amazing the damage you can do in 4 years that will take 4 times 4 to correct.
Okay, this guy shouldn't be president. We've got 3.5 years of data. He's Looney Tunes. Let's find him a different job, but president is not the right job for him.
A lot of people who should vote Republican either will stay home or vote for Biden or vote for somebody else, not because they've changed philosophically, but because they see Trump as a failed president.
We have to stop him. And so, listen, I mean, I hope we can. I mean, it's going to be a close election.
I think he will make it psychologically inevitable that he will be reelected, no matter the means. Manipulating people's fears, put them in such chaos.
In the best possible world, we would all learn from this, and we would never allow someone like Donald Trump to be elected again. We'll see what happens.
Are you a good loser?
I'm not a good loser. I don't like to lose.
Are you suggesting that you might not accept the results of the election?
I have to see. Look, I have to see. No, I'm not going to just say yes. I'm not going to say no, and I didn't last time either.
There is the real potential that if he loses re-election, that he will declare the results illegitimate.
Because he'll still be president the day after the election. And the president has a lot of power.
Greatest comfort to me about the theory that Trump wants to take full power is that whether you're a fascist or a communist or a totalitarian of any stripe, it's because you have an idea what you want to do with the power once you get it. I don't think that enters into his calculation.
What's stopping him from referring to fake election results and just not leaving the White House? We haven't been through a situation like that in this country. What do we do?
I'm confident that that will happen, that he will not stay, and that Republicans in particular will say we do not accept any possibility that he would try to hang on.
And on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the response to this crisis?
I'd rate it a 10. I think we've done a great job.
I wish that we could speak to the 180,000 people that Donald Trump allowed to die. His incompetence has led to American deaths. If he would have gotten a hold on this virus, on the coronavirus, in December when the world knew about it, even if he would have acted a few weeks faster, it would have changed things.
I think the effects of this many people dying in short time period will be with us for decades. And it is a national moment of shame because most of these deaths were preventable, and yet we let it happen.
October 2nd, 2020, Donald Trump is tested and declared positive for coronavirus.
When we saw those images of the president and he's getting off of Marine One on the south lawn of the White House, hand looking defeated, to me that was a sneak preview of coming attractions. That may be what he looks like on election night.